Hello, and welcome to One World, One Health with bite-sized insights from people working to solve some of the biggest problems facing our planet. I'm Maggie Fox. One Health means we're all one: animals, plants and people, and the climate and environment. A very good example of this link comes from bats, which harbor a number of viruses that affect people. Think coronaviruses like COVID. Think rabies, the deadliest virus known. Think Ebola, remember that one? And Marburg, its very close cousin. But while people often catch these viruses directly from bats, sometimes the link is more mysterious. It's still not clear, for instance, how people catch Ebola or Marburg from bats in parts of Africa. A team working at the Chambura Lion Project, part of the Volcanoes Safaris Partnership Trust in Uganda, got some unexpected insight into how this might possibly happen. They were setting up cameras to see what large animals, such as lions and leopards, were up to. What they found surprised them. In this episode of One World, One Health, we're chatting with Bosco Atkwatse, a wildlife biologist, and Dr. Alex Brachkovskis, science director of the Chambura Lion Project, a conservation biologist and wildlife photographer. They discovered at least 14 different species of animals, from leopards to giant lizards called monitors, were using a cave filled with Egyptian fruit bats as a kind of snack bar. This was startling because no one had documented that so many different animals were eating these bats. And it was a bit worrying because these bats are known to carry Marburg virus, a type of virus that can cause a rare but deadly hemorrhagic fever. And this was a difficult podcast to get together. Alex joined us from his base in Brisbane, Australia, and Bosco joined us from the Queen Elizabeth Conservation Area in Uganda. Bosco, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So what you found was that a bunch of animals were visiting this cave and hunting the fruit bats. Can you describe what your cameras showed?
Part of our surveys that we run in this park is we conduct annual population surveys of large predators, lions, leopards, and hyenas. And we use different methods for lions and for hyenas and leopards combined. Hyenas and leopards, we use the same method, which is camera trapping. And so part of the places where we're supposed to put these camera traps is where there is the bat cave, the python cave. So it is a dome-shaped cave, as I can say, how these volcanic caves be like. They have like multiple openings or like one single opening. But this one has only two openings, one in the front and the other one in the back. So it's a cave. On top, there is a number of trees, big trees. And on the floor, it's just mounds of guano shared by these bats. And on the sides and down, there are some crevices, like holes where pythons and bats all hide down there. Most probably where they breed. Our camera traps have revealed 15 species actively interacting with the bat cave and the bats themselves. We have the actual predators and the scavengers that are feeding on these bats and bat remains. Predator so far we've recorded is the African leopard, Panthera pardus, and it's one subadult male that frequently visits the cave and picks a bat or more bats like in one go and just eats them sometimes in front of the cameras, just carries them away from the cave area. So, and then there is a couple of birds, raptors, the eagles that just come and pick a number of birds and just fly away with them. There you can't trace where they take them. But sure enough, there are those that actually eat them right in front of the cameras when they have all those videos. So it's an active cave that is 24 hours active. Like, there are animals that will use it, that make use of it during the day, and others will make use of it during the night, depending on the actual activeness of these animals, these species. Those that are actually nocturnal will always visit the cave at night. The owls, the African civets, the genet cats, we've registered the large spotted genet. Whereas during the day, other animals will also come. However, the leopard has come both day and night.
And now, Alex, can you tell us a little bit about how this came about? This is part of a larger project, and it's a collaboration that you've got going. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, Maggie. So the Chambura Lion Project is part of a longer leopard, lion, and spotted hyena monitoring initiative that we founded in 2023, and it's based largely on sort of a broader collaboration with the Ugandan Wildlife Authority, which is the Ugandan government. And sort of the mandate of our project is to provide a scientific monitoring wing, if you will, to the government to try and figure out how many lions, leopards, and hyenas remain in different protected areas around the country. So Bosco and the rest of the team essentially drive a lot of the field efforts around that. And as Bosco said, that's sort of how the discovery came about. He was setting his camera traps as part of a long-term monitoring grid. And, he just happened to feel that maybe I should set a camera at the cave. So that's how this all sort of came about.
So, weren't the bats trying to get away from these animals that are hunting them?
So when I describe the architecture of the cave, so the roof is where these bats do roost, and there are 400,000 or more bats just roosting in clumps. They just densely packed close to each other in a way that you could barely see the roof itself. So it's a bat after bat, bat after bat. All of them clump together, probably to get some warmth or for also security, I think. But for the videos that we've got, it's difficult for all of them to actually fly away. There is always going to be a chance for a leopard to just stand on the mount and just pull like 5 bats at one time and put in the mouth and just go away. Birds like African fish eagle, which we thought are actually fish eagles, because of their name. They've actually, been feeding on these bats for a really long time. And we've had the videos since January this year. So just the way they are densely packed together exposes them so vulnerable to these bats. And so, more so, the distance between the cave floor and the roof is just short. It's about a meter or a meter and a half. So it's easy for any animal to just stand on the floor and grab a mouthful of bats and run away with it.
And apparently, there's so many bats that the predators go a little nuts. It's like a snack bar for them or something, and they're acting in an unusual way.
Well, yeah, the principle behind predation is that predators will always want to invest the least amount of energy in getting food. And this, of course, is self-explanatory. They always want to go to places or to get the prey that is easiest to kill. And for these bats, you can imagine an apple tree or like a mango tree. The mangoes are just hanging there. You just, raise and pick one. It's much easier than, chasing a deer or like a little antelope in the forest, you can imagine. So that's why probably the leopard has just found a place to pick a snack every time that it can.
And tell me a little bit about some of the other animals you saw, because you expect to see a leopard or something, or even an eagle, but what else did you see in their hunting?
Surely, we actually have seen African rock pythons. They're the largest species of snakes in Africa. And seeing these snakes just primarily feeding on bats, because they are where they are, I doubt if there's any chance of them to actually get any other prey. However, it's not only one snake species. It's just interesting also to know how many snake species are there interacting with each other and with the bats, and being able to respect the rule of ecology, where it's survival for the fittest. So we have Nile monitors that have also, we've also had many videos of them killing bats. And then one other interesting aspect is of the monkeys. We've got the blue monkeys actually hunting. They jump down from a tree and pick a bat or bats and quarrel with them. So you can imagine how crazy that is. It's a couple of videos where I've got these monkeys, taking bats away. And for most of these cases, they come sometimes as individuals or in a troop of them. And then they just like surprise bats. Well, it's not like surprising because bats are just seeing, they are watching, but because they are so clamped, it's not easy for them to actually jump away to escape. So there is always going to be like a big chance for a monkey to pick bats so easily.
So interesting. Do you normally see monkeys hunting bats?
Not really. I think it's only one paper on the internet that describes chimps actually feeding on bat guano in a certain forest in Uganda. But no one has actually seen monkeys feed on bats in Africa.
Wait, chimpanzees eating bat guano? You mean they're eating the bat feces, the poop?
Exactly, yes.
Boy, that's kind of disgusting.
It sounds like disgusting, but it is zoonotically important.
It surely is because, okay, all these diseases that bats carry, a lot of it's found in the guano, right?
Yeah, iguana, yeah, and fluids and blood and blah, blah, everything like that. So you can imagine is that what we've found out at the cave is actually a door for scientists to investigate if bats are carrying the Marburg virus disease. Is it possible that other animals that are interacting with the bats?
Can we talk a little bit about Marburg? It's a close relative of Ebola, and both of these viruses have caused numerous outbreaks and epidemics across Africa.
Yes, I think what Bosco and myself can both humbly admit, we are not virologists, we are ecologists. So we kind of look at this from an ecological lens. So as you said, it is a filovirus and it's a close cousin of Ebola, and it causes this viral hemorrhagic fever. This particular bat roost actually has Marburg. So they isolated that roughly between 5 and 7.5% of this population of bats in the cave are shedding this virus. So yes, it's one of the deadliest viruses on Earth, and it's also found in this cave.
And people have been wondering how either virus could have traveled from bats to people. And you all aren't saying you have seen that somehow having all these other animals has amplified it, but you've added another piece to the puzzle.
So if you look at the foundational work of the CDC, they have hypothesized two pathways. One, that people enter the cave and they catch the virus directly from the bats. And two, from their spatial mapping where they put GPS backpacks onto the backs of the bats. The bats fly into a human garden. They eat a fig tree. The fig tree drops to the ground. A child maybe eats that fig tree that has the bat excrement or saliva on it. Bob's your uncle. There's your spillover pathway. However, Bosco has potentially uncovered a web of other pathways. It could be a Nile monitor, it could be a leopard, it could be the blue monkeys. So I think that's the beauty of Bosco's discovery, is that he's shown this other potential spillover sort of pathway.
I mean, in the beginning, we weren't that much concerned, only that when we saw the leopard feeding on the bats, oh Jesus, like what is this? Has a leopard ever fed on a bat before? And that's how you start reading the literature. Has it ever happened? Yes. There is a couple of photos of leopards feeding on African foxed bats somewhere in India. And so there you realize that there is not so much information about what you've just seen. And that gives you actually an advantage of publishing your own findings. But, monkeys feeding on bats, there could be literature on monkeys feeding on iguana, or people theoretically hypothesizing that. But where is the evidence? This is the evidence that we've got. So it's important to actually note it out in the science world that, hey, actually this is happening. And maybe if we have been monitoring wildlife in a certain way, maybe can we adjust and use modified and better technology like camera traps, which are, of course, non-invasive. They're not going to disturb anything happening in the area. It's much better than visiting the place frequently to take any kind of data. It wasn't out of training or advice for me to go out and look for the bats or the cave or anything. It's just this kind of ecological intuitivity. Like you just get too sensitive in the ecosystems where you are working. So I've been in the forest, I've been in the bush, or let me say bush specifically, working in the park for the last 6 years now. So it was like something that triggers your mind, but like, okay, what actually happens here? So to me, it's very exciting that the information that we're giving out is going to be of help at some point in time. Because usually scientists and virologists have believed that there is maybe only one or two ways how viruses, leap from species. They always thought bats carry viruses to people's places and blah, blah, and drop their poop and, but there is actually a complex cycle through which they could, be transmitted. You can imagine how many of those animal species that I've mentioned do interact with the others from the savannas and then to the communities. And also considering the location of the bat cave, it's not very far from the community. So there is a high chance that many people might contract disease at any chance. Also, the tourists that visit the cave also, with minimum or no PPE might also be a sensitive matter. So it's important for us to reach out to the world to be like, okay, maybe there is a better way that we could protect ourselves away from these viruses.
Bosco, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you too. Also, thank you guys for, recognizing this. I'm sure many people wouldn't take it as any important, especially if it is from a young man, African, from poor country, Uganda. Yeah, this is something we've discussed with my people around. They were like, oh, maybe some people will not take it serious because just from a nobody, people, until you've like a PhD and blah, blah, then people will think of your work being any important. But thank you guys for, seeing this equally important.
Listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it. And please have a look at the website at onehealthtrust.org. We'll share some of the pictures that Alex and Bosco took. And if you have ideas for subjects you'd like us to cover, please share them at owh@onehealthtrust.org. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to One World, One Health, brought to you by the One Health Trust. I'm Ramanan Lakshminarayan, founder and president of the One Health Trust. You can subscribe to One World, One Health on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at One Health Trust, one word, for updates on One World, One Health and the latest in research on One Health issues like drug resistance, disease spillovers, and the social determinants of health. Finally, please do consider donating to the One Health Trust to support this podcast and other initiatives and research that help us promote health and well-being worldwide. Until next time.